Welcome back, everybody, to the First Strike Podcast. I'm your host, and I go by the Marathon Don. This is officially episode number 7, lucky number 7. And if you were a combat sports fan, this was a very lucky weekend for you because we were treated to not one but two major events. In the world of MMA, we had the amazing UFC Seattle. In the world of boxing, we had the phenomenal rematch between Bivol and Bertabitov. And even before this weekend, we were treated to some breaking news by Dana White. So with so much to talk about, but so little time, let's get right into it. So before the fight weekend even started, Dana White he went on Instagram Live and he broke the news. Topuria officially vacating his featherweight title and moving up in lightweight. They have not announced the matchup against Makhachev as of yet. All they're announcing is Topuria vacating the title, and the next championship fight at featherweight is going to be Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez. So as of right now, Topuria, he doesn't even have a fight booked against Makhachev. But I'll tell you what, fight fans, that is a perfect main event for International Fight Week at the end of July. At the beginning of June, at the end of June, beginning of July. I think that's a perfect main event. When we think about super fights and dream fights, right now in the UFC, you can't name me a bigger matchup. Maybe John Jones and Aspinall, but there's still a lot of holdups with that fight in that division. But Topuria has cemented a tremendous legacy at featherweight. The first man to knock out Max Holloway. The first man to finish Volkanovski and end his reign of terror in the featherweight division. I think it's the perfect time for him to move up in weight. The only thing that I'm a little disappointed is that he had to vacate his title. I'm a big fan of champion versus champion, and I think that Topuria earned the opportunity to become the double champion. Makhachev has been on a tremendous win streak in the UFC, and he's ran through the lightweight division. He's finished a who's who in the lightweight division. The only other competitor couldn't even make it to the fight. So I would say that right now is a perfect time for this fight to happen. It's a super fight, and honestly, it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up because Topuria has knockout power, and he also has very underrated wrestling. We saw it against Mitchell, we saw it against Ryan Hall, and I do think that this is styles make fights, and this is a very competitive matchup. So I do think that even though the size difference might be a little too much, I think that Makhachev is not going to be able to strike with Topuria like he can with these other guys, and he's going to prove a little bit slicker to grapple and to take down. So I can't wait for the matchup to be announced. I think the only thing that I'm very disappointed in is the champion versus champion element. I think that would have added an extra spice to the fight that it's already going to have a lot of spice. So I think in this day and age, that is the perfect super fight, and I can't wait for that fight. So now we move on to there was a plethora of announcements. There were so many fight cards from UFC Miami and so many fights that were announced. I would say that touching on some of the big notable fights that stood out to me, Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez. I think that it's surprising to me that Volkanovski is going to get a title shot coming off a knockout loss the way he did. And if I'm not mistaken, he's coming off 2 losses because he lost to Makhachev and then he lost his title. So for him to get another title shot at featherweight, I get it. He was a phenomenal champion at the weight class, but coming off a knockout loss, the way that he lost to Topuria, I'm not a big fan of him fighting Diego Lopez for the title. I think that there might have been, maybe they should have just done the interim title, honestly, and let Topuria go up and claim that champ status. But I'd be remiss if I don't say that I think it's a phenomenal matchup. It's a great main event. So in that particular fight, I do think that Diego Lopez, he's on the up and up and on an upward trajectory, where someone like Volkanovski coming out not 1 but 2 knockout losses, I don't know if his chin is the same. And we saw it with Adesanya. And now I do think that the same thing is going to happen with Volkanovski. I think Diego Lopez is going to find that chin, put him down, maybe put him down with some ground and pound, or put him away with a submission. So that's my early prediction on that fight. And of course, once we get closer with the stare downs and the press conference, I'll give you guys a more thorough prediction. But another notable fight that was is super exciting that was announced this week is Paddy Pimilton versus Michael Chandler. And Michael Chandler does not miss. This guy is must-see material. He's must-watch TV. Every fight that he does, every fight that he takes on, every competitor he takes on, he is like so exciting. This guy comes, is kill or be killed with Michael Chandler from the opening bell to the last second of the matchup. He goes 100%. And Paddy Pimilton is on a phenomenal win streak. Like, he just finished Bobby Green, who's a sturdy veteran, and Paddy just ran through him. So I think this is a perfect matchup to see where Paddy is. Is he going to be able to reach the upper echelons of the division? And for someone like Michael Chandler, he hasn't had a notable victory in quite a while. Honestly, the last big victory that I could remember in the UFC was either Tony Ferguson or his knockout of Dan Hooker, and that was ages ago. So I do think that it's time for him to, like, he needs a victory. He hasn't had a victory in a few fights, so I think this is a perfect matchup. It's going to tell us a lot, and it's going to be fireworks. Paddy Pimilton is a killer. Michael Chandler is kill or be killed. So I do think that this is a treat for the fans, and the UFC could not have made a better matchup for each of these fighters. Such fun matchmaking. I will definitely be tuning in, and just look out for my prediction episode of that particular UFC fight card, because it's going to be a good one. But now moving on to the fights of this weekend, we had two big events, and I'm going to just go right into the UFC Seattle event and just keep on, since we already started talking about MMA. And let's talk about this fight card. I mean, so much finishes all across the prelim, all across the main card. Let's talk about some notable wins that stood out to me. I would say that if I look back to the fight card last night, Fluffy getting it done against Brendan Allen. I was going for Brendan Allen, and I'm a big Brendan Allen fan. I thought that he had more gas in the tank. I felt like he could have done more in the scrambles in that third round. But once again, a great win for Fluffy. That's his nickname. That's what I'm going to call you. So really, really good win. I wasn't a big fan of the way he finished the fight. Round 3, I felt like it's way too much holding and too much controlling, not really advancing position, not really, very reluctant to strike, but very solid win. So congratulations to you. Gian De Silva, I believe that's his name, with knockout of the night. What a flashy striker. What a fun fighter. What a passionate post-fight interview. I love this guy. I think he has the charisma. And what was that referee looking at? I mean, he knocked the guy down. He's standing over him, just looking at the ref like, this guy cannot continue. I just rocked him, knocked him down. The referee does nothing, and then he jumps in for the finish. But I think that was a nice finish, a nice addition to his highlight reel, and I can't wait to see who he fights next. He called out Mitchell, and I think that's a fight that Dana White should definitely consider. And other than that, what else we got? I think let's talk about the main event. Henry Cejudo, Triple C, the king of cringe, making his return to the octagon, taking on a knockout artist, San Yang. And I do think that in this particular fight, UFC made the decision to go back to the black gloves, the original gloves. They tried to remedy the eye poke problem by introducing new gloves, and so many fighters hated it. There was bad feedback. I heard that fighters had trouble closing their fists. There were a lot of issues with the grappling, being able to hold fighters. So my understanding is that's one of the reasons why they got rid of the new gold gloves that was recently introduced. A lot of fighters did not like it, and they were opting for the old gloves. So now we got the old gloves back, but then where does that leave us with the issues of the eye poke? So this is my analysis of the fight. I think that Henry Cejudo looked great. He barely shot for any takedowns. His stand-up was really, really good. He had that nice karate stance, but I do think that Yang's leg kicks was wearing on him. I constantly saw him switch stands right after the leg kicks. It did seem like he started to fade a little bit, and he was on the wrong end, the receiving end of a lot of the bigger punches from Yang. I don't know if Cejudo would have won the fight regardless if it went the full distance. He lost the decision when they called it by round 4. However, do I think that he was, that he looked great on the fight? I don't know, man. I feel like Father Time is catching up to Cejudo. His wrestling wasn't really there like it used to be. And I think that Yang had the bigger moments of the fights with the leg kicks, with the strong punches. Cejudo had good moments, but at no point in the fight did I think he was in control. So now let's talk about the eye pokes. The eye pokes were vicious. That was horrible. That was some of the worst. I don't think I've ever seen in the history of me watching combat sports, I've never seen a double eye poke. Like, it literally looked like he poked him in both eyes at the same time. And I don't blame Cejudo for, honestly, let's give credit to Cejudo, because he took the full 5 minutes, which was a complete veteran move, having the mind frame to think and say, hey, you know what? I got up to 5 minutes. Let me take my time. Let me sit down. He wanted to win. He's a competitor. He came here to win. He didn't come here to get a DQ or look for a way out. He told the fans, hold on, guys. Let me take my full 5 minutes. Let me recover and let me see what I can do. So credit to him for continuing the fight. It seemed like the referee was really pushing for the round to end so they could go toward the scorecards. But honestly, that had to be one of the worst eye pokes I've ever seen, the double eye pokes. I do think that Yang should have been deducted a point. I don't think that it was fair for him just to get a warning, because in my opinion, whether the foul is intentional or not intentional, that's very tough to measure. Like, we will never really know the intent behind a foul unless the fighter tells us, because every fighter is going to say, I didn't mean to. So what are you going to do? Are you going to do a lie detector test? Like, are you going to look at the replay and say, hey, yeah, his finger was that direction, so that indicated intent? I don't really know. But the reality is that foul was that foul affected Cejudo so much, and it was so impactful that it ended the fight eventually. But a point should have been deducted. I feel like for eye poke specifically, cage grabs, and severe cases of low blows, a point should be deducted. Because if these fouls are affecting the outcome of the fight, and in this case, causing the fight to end, I feel like there has to be some sort of consequence or penalty. As soon as Cejudo finished his break, he took the whole 5 minutes to try to recover. He told his corner, he told the ref he could barely see, he couldn't see, but he tried and he fought another minute. As soon as the fight reset, Yang came right back out with his hands like this. He was like this, literally with his fingers out. John Jones is known for doing the same thing. And I think, like, at what point are we going to get more serious with these eye pokes? I feel like the answer is you have to penalize them, because if you're not enforcing the rules, then that just means that there are no rules. Young comes out like this and he's throwing haymakers at Cejudo, who's trying to recover still. It's obvious he can't see, and I just feel like there should have been a more focus on the penalty towards it. The referee rushed the fight to continue. Cejudo took his own 5 minutes, but then as soon as the fourth round started, they ended the fight and went to the scorecards. So this is where it gets a little confusing to me, because my understanding was that if Cejudo could not continue, then Young would have lost by disqualification and Cejudo would have gotten the victory. But because he chose to continue and they completed 3 rounds, then it went to the scorecard. So now I got to ask myself, was Cejudo aware of this? And if he was, would he have chosen to continue? Because I know that if I was in his shoes and they tell me, hey, listen, if you quit right now, if you cannot continue right now, you're going to win by disqualification. Or if you decide to continue to fight, the fight's going to go to the scorecards where there's a high chance you're going to lose. I would have just chosen disqualification. I would have said, hey, listen, the reality is I can't see, and I don't really care what happens after this. I can't see. I was fouled. It wasn't my fault. Go check the replay. The replay showed that he got severely fouled. So I just feel like that ending was very disappointing, very confusing, and it just highlights the specific rules around eye pokes and really emphasizes how it's very subjective based on the referee's perspective. And it shouldn't be like that. I think that all penalties, specifically eye pokes, low blows, and cage grabs that are so impactful and so, like, you could visually, like, see the impact, I think that there has to be a point taken away from the fighter that does it. Imagine if there was a point taken away, how would that have affected the scorecards? We might have gotten a draw. Cejudo might have won the decision. So very disappointing end to what was overall a phenomenal fight card. So many finishes across the card. Where do they go from here? Well, Cejudo wants to run it back, but I think that Even Dana White at the post-fight press conference, he said that he saw all he needed to see. I think all of us did. That he literally said he threw it back to the journalist. He's like, "Do you want to see it?" And the journalist was like stuttering, like, I don't really know. I think Dana White just hit the nail on the head. I think that we saw the fight. We saw what we needed to see. We saw that Cejudo's on the decline. Young had the most impactful moments of the fight. I think for someone like Cejudo, I think that his next fight is really going to tell us where he's at. I do think that he should mix up his wrestling a little more. He's in a very competitive weight class, but there are some fun fights. You know, he could fight against someone like Sugar Sean O'Malley. I mean, he still has a very popular name. He's a former two-division world champion, former champ. So I do think that there's still some fun fights in his future. Someone like Sugar Sean will be fun. Just a lead up to that fight would be fun as well. So I do think that if he stays in that weight class, I would like to see him fight fighters with bigger name value. So like a Sugar Sean, maybe like a Jose Aldo. Who wouldn't want to see that matchup? And then for someone like Young, I think he moves up the ladder. I think him and Rob Font will be a phenomenal matchup. Rob Font had a great victory in the earlier portion of the fight. I think they styles make matchup. Rob Font has a very good boxing style that I think is going to match up very well with Young. So I think that's the perfect fight for him. Keep both of them busy, see where they are. I don't think that this fight moves Young too much up the rankings. But for now, that's where I would like to see it. So what do I rate UFC Seattle 1 through 10? I would say, so very interesting. They didn't call it a fight night. They called it UFC Seattle. So it's very interesting to me to observe whether do I rate this as a pay-per-view, do I rate this as a live event, as a fight night. I'm going to consider this a fight night. So in the world of fight nights, I do think that this is one of the best fight night cards I've seen in a while. So many finishes, so much entertaining, so much entertainment spread out through the event, and so many named fighters. So I think overall, I give it a solid 8, a phenomenal fight card. I think the ending was very disappointing, but other than that, tons of value, tons of fun. So shout out to the UFC. Great job, matchmakers. I had a great time watching that event. So now moving on to the world of boxing. Let's talk about boxing. Riyad season is doing a phenomenal job. They were promoted of the year, and I love everything that they're doing. Shout out Prince Turkey Alaish. You're doing a phenomenal job. You guys are killing it. Everything from the presentation to the build-up, to the fight card itself, the value of the fight, the cost of the pay-per-view, to the fans, everything was phenomenal. What a stacked boxing card in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I just think that Turkey and Riyad season, it's a new trend. I mean, they purchased Ring Magazine, and they're just doing so many amazing things in the world of boxing and bringing us all these famous, amazing boxers for tremendous value and putting them on the same card. I think that's something that UFC has always done a great job of, is really building the cards with names. Where back in the day, boxing pay-per-view card or an event card would be carried by one fight. So you might have someone like a Mike Tyson at the top of the card, but the 4 fights leading up to that fight, it's full of nobodies that we really know. Riyad season is changing that 100%, and every fight had a named fighter. So going through the card, I think that watching Zhang get knocked out, that was very surprising to me. That was a very shocking moment, because this man just finished and possibly retired Wilder, and then for him to get finished like that off body shots, that was a shocking moment for me. Moving on to the next fight, Shakur Stevenson. A lot of people, he gets a lot of hate. People were saying that he's fighting an electrician, or that he fought a very boring matchup. But my question to you is, what more do you want from the man? Like, he went out there, he did his job, and he finished his opponent. I felt like he showed great technical prowess. His footwork, phenomenal. The snap to his punches, he was letting them hands go. When he hurt the opponent, he was closing the distance and eventually got the finish. The way he was working the body, I think he looks strong. He looks fit for the weight class. To me, it was a stellar performance and a great addition to his highlight reels. And I think that he was long overdue for a finish or a TKO or knockout, and he got it. So shout out to Shakur Stevenson. I was thoroughly entertained. I enjoyed that fight. I'm a big fan, and I can't wait to see your next fight. I would like to see him fight someone like a Lomachenko or just another name, like come back and get a name fighter. Like, let's consider this a tune-up fight, but I would like to see him come back and fight someone with a little bit more name recognition. Besides that, there was, of course, Joseph Parker. Wow, what a tremendous victory by Joseph Parker. What a knockout. That was I believe it was a right hand, and that right hand, it looked like it came from another planet. So big shout out to Joseph Parker. He called out Usyk, and I think that would be a phenomenal matchup. I think he's building so much momentum. He finished Wilder, and he just finished a guy that was like the dark horse of the division that a lot of people don't want to fight, and he finished him brutally by knockout. That was a very, very vicious knockout. So I do think that there's nothing but big fights in his future. It's very sad that Tyson Fury retired, because I think Joseph Parker versus Tyson Fury would have been a great fight. But why not Anthony Joshua? Why not a Usyk? I think those would be amazing fights for Joseph Park, and he deserves it. So shout out to him. Great, great victory. And what a great undercard overall by Riyad's season leading up to the main event. And even before the main event got started, just the promotional videos from Bivol and Bertabitev, like this felt like a Super Bowl. And I love that Riyad season does that. They're creating moments that are larger than life, moments that we will remember forever. So I wish that the UFC would take note of that and add a little bit more to the presentation. They do it for certain fight cards like the International Fight Week or certain bigger events, but I wish that they did it more often for the championship fights, because it really makes the fights feel special. Leading up to this match, Bivol felt like he got robbed in the first fight. Bertabitev felt like he needed to put an exclamation mark on his finish. And I do think that these guys, like, their styles just mesh up so much that they're so well-rounded. They're so competitive that each are each other's equal. So moving into this fight, I felt like Bivol had to stick and move, and he was just throwing punches in bunches, and I do think that level of activity is what led him to victory. I think Bertabitev, he's getting older, and it kind of showed. It was very interesting for me to see that when he was coming to the ring, he had knee pads. I'm not that familiar if he's typically wears knee pads, but I don't think his footwork was there as it's been in the past. The power was there. I did see him hurt Bivol a few times, but I don't think that his activity was up to the level of Bivol, especially in the later rounds. So congratulations to Bivol. What a tremendous hard-earned victory, becoming the undisputed champion at the 175-pound weight division. I do think that they should not run it back. I think that right now is the perfect time for both fighters to take on other fresh matchups, and maybe after having one fight each with a different opponent, come back and revisit this fight, and they'll be bigger than ever. Because right now they're both tied 1-1. Both won by decisions, but I don't think, even though both fights were so competitive, I don't think we're clamoring to see them fight again. I think that we saw everything we needed to see. They're both very, very closely matched up, both very competitive. Bivol does have the cardio that I feel edges Bertabitev. I don't think his power is there as it used to. He reminds me a little bit of Triple G, when Triple G fought Canelo, where Canelo's just winning by a matter of inches, just a few more punches, a few more combinations that's causing him to sway the judges. So I think with Bivol, it's going to be the same thing. If they fight again, it's going to be a matter of inches. It's going to be another close competitive fight. So at this juncture, I'd rather see them take on different opponents. For someone like Bivol, I think the perfect matchup is Benavidez. Benavidez was there. He was out there in Saudi Arabia. He's just coming off a great performance from defeating Morrell. So I think it's a perfect time to make that matchup. I would love to see how they stylistically match up. There's a fresh matchup for both guys. And for Benavidez, he gets to take on someone that is the undisputed champion and that beat Canelo. So I think that styles make fights, and that would be a very, very interesting fight for me to watch. In terms of Bertabitev, I would like to see where he goes from here. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any fighter that I'm clamoring to see him fight. But I do think that whoever he fights next should not be Bivol. I think that he needs to come back to the drawing board, take a tune-up, get that power, develop your, he's getting older, so he's going to have to kind of like evolve a little bit or adapt to the slowness. His speed is going away. So I think he has to adapt a little bit and shift gears. So that's what I would like to see. I would like to see Berdibeev go back to the drawing board, continue to evolve and adapt. But for Bivol, I want to see Bivol take on Benavidez. I think that's the fight to make. But big shout out to Riyad Season. Big shout out to Turkey Al Aishak. I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job. So shout out to all of you. And I can't wait to see what's next for Riyad Season. And that sums it up, ladies and gentlemen. We covered every notable event that happened in the last week in the world of combat sports. And I'm so excited because there's so many big fights in the horizon. So let's make sure that we keep the energy and the momentum going. If you enjoy what you watch and you love combat sports and you want to get closer to the combat sports culture, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Make sure you like, comment, fresh episodes. Every Monday, we drop a brand new episode discussing everything going on in the world of combat sports. You're going to get to hear in-depth analysis coming from the Marathon Don, whether it's boxing, whether it's WWE, whether it's MMA, anything notable, we're talking about it right here, and you get to be a part of it with the Marathon Don, because here in the First Strike Podcast, we strike first and we talk later. My name is the Marathon Don, and I am out.